Hello, and we're looking again at the short turns in this part 2. Again, just showing another type of short turn. And we've already discussed this. There's short turns and short turns. I think we all agree, as long as we're in a relatively narrow corridor and we've got some control, we class it as a short turn. One of my favorite exercises on a short turn to do is to get people to do short turns on almost flat terrain, because we find that this really improves their mechanism of understanding the fulcrum point of the ski, i.e. fore, middle and aft. Because when you've got an actual piste going downhill, gravity assists people a lot in a short turn, and it also it allows them to cheat almost. Whereas on flat terrain, if you actually try this to do a short turn with no speed, and you have to use the hinges, the ankle, the knee and the hip correctly, you have to understand fore and aft, or also how to use vertical sometimes, and a pole plant, which really helps as well. I find that a great drill.
Yeah, and I think on the flat, if you make it a bit of a competition, like I do with my groups, my clients, they soon realize that to be faster left and right, you have to take out that vertical movement. So they automatically just lower their center of mass. They remain more in that still stacked position, and they're working more from the ground up over, instead of using that strong vertical movement that's more present at the lower levels in the ski association. Yeah,
so this is another one from your group of 3. And she is, again, demonstrating a short turn on a relatively easy red, I think it is.
Yeah, up on Kit's red run, yeah.
So you'd been working on, again, I presume, had you done javelin turns and things?
Yeah, so it was the same group that the last client was in. Same style, worked a lot with the NZ system. So she had quite a bit of a wider corridor when I first got over, about 4 meters when it came to a short radius turn. A lot of kind of ski swag, like I said in the last podcast, just where the upper body was coming round, it was kind of pulling her off the axis. Steering was coming from quite high up the chain as opposed to down from feet first. So yeah, we built it up through the week of, we did javelins just to get the feeling of one leg steering against the other leg, or the upper body turning against the lower body.
In talking about that, because obviously I know Tom on bigpictureskiing.com, he is covering the javelin turn this week, or has done. And I know we mention it a lot, or I do mention a lot in previous videos. One of the reasons that a javelin turn can be very good is to try and help somebody like this who hasn't understood that the body's split into left and right, 2 halves. And if you understand how to create torque against those 2 parts of the body, all this thing you're seeing with her hip and her pelvis can be taken out of the equation, can be improved rapidly when a javelin turn is properly understood. She clearly hasn't got that. If you look at the video here, if you want to understand what torque is and why some people can do it naturally, here we're playing a video from, this is Mike Tyson, a bit older, Jamie, is it?
Yeah, so Mike Tyson teaching a 2-time MMA champion about how to generate torque, basically, how to turn the body against the legs, release that tension to generate force, basically speed, velocity, whatever you want to call it.
Well, in our case, this is where the hip can internally rotate, so your femur can internally rotate and it can externally rotate. Having access to both internal and external rotation is extremely important, whether you're working in the sagittal plane, such as doing a squat, or whether you are boxing in this case, because when your back leg in boxing goes behind you, this requires you to have access to internal rotation. Now, interestingly, on the video that we look here is, in her case, she hasn't got torque helping her on the inside pelvis, on the inside hip here. So there's there's not that counter rotation part because she hasn't any torque at the minute.
And just to go back to talking about the Mike Tyson video, is what Mike Tyson's trying to teach us that to generate that force, he's rotating his body against his legs and then releasing it and creating power.
He's winding up.
He's winding it up, we call him boxing, yeah. Loading the front foot, boom, pop off it. And it's the same in skiing, it's just the opposite way around. The upper body's staying still and strong like Mike Tyson's legs were, and we're rotating the legs against the body. So it's just the opposite way around.
I think this is where it comes as well, where I've heard a lot in mogul skiing, you know, people see it sometimes that in a mogul skier, the legs are acting as one, whereas when you ask a World Cup mogul skier how they see it, they very much say, no, my legs might look they're together, but they're independently working.
Yes.
Because they know that there's an internal, external rotation. And this javelin turn that Tom speaks about on big picture skiing, he'll explain to you why that's so important to your short turns and to your performance element, that you understand torque. So whereas Jamie, you would understand torque naturally because of the boxing background.
Yeah.
You might see it in other sports because not everybody's boxed, for example. But I know everybody will have cut left and right. If you've played football or you've dummied somebody, feint somebody to go one direction, then jump the other way. These are all things where you're cutting, but you're creating torque to be able to do that. And in skiing, this is very much so in her skiing. She needs a lot of understanding of counter torque, counter rotation, and also how to control this hip line here.
Yeah, she gets a lot of deflection of the hip in the lower phase of the arc, especially on this side. She doesn't have symmetry between the two turns. She just or in the body between the two turns. The turns might be symmetrical in the sense of the arc, but her movements on one side and the other side are slightly different.
So what we're really asking again is for your own sensation on the hill, torque can be a difficult one for you. If you're not involved in sports that involve you moving fast left to right or planting your feet and driving and twisting and having this transverse plane of operation, then it can be difficult for you to get what we're talking about here. But to be able to create torque again, if we look at Jamie's still shot here, you can clearly see he has stopped the rotation at this point. So he's set up in his short turn. He's edged as much as he needs to do. He's now wants to stop that rotation. And the quickest way for him to do that is to get some weight towards the heels, in my way, and the tails. And I keep saying that it's a bit controversial at times when I talk about the heels a lot, but I know that's going to stop that angular rotation and give you grip to be able to rotate against this hip, against this one, and stop that action going that way anymore and going to the new turn this way, yeah?
Yeah, and it's just the yellow arrows there just to show that the hip isn't deflecting, it's not popping out like it was in the previous
example
video, that everything's nice and parallel, nice and stacked. And obviously you can see I'm very, very tail heavy here, the tips off the ground, because I'm really coming to the heel, to the back of the foot as I'm trying to, like I said before, I'm not actually pushing down on my platform. I don't necessarily feel like I'm directing my ski around an arc when it comes to pressure wise. I'm trying to actually apply pressure around that arc as opposed to just pushing down on the ski.
So from this small bite-sized clip again, we're moving forward with the short turn. We've talked about torque, where it comes from. Whatever sport you do, whatever it is, whether it's basketball, it's tennis, it's golf, which is a great example of where there's a lot of torque forces, start to understand how that is important in skiing, in all skiing, not just the short turn, but very much you feel it in a short turn. And again, if you want to look at the exercise in detail of the javelin turn, pop on to bigpictureskiing.com and you can see that there as well. We'll continue forward with this unless you want to add something. Yeah?
Nah, but I think it's like the Bruce Lee thing of, water can flow, it can crash. And I think in every turn you have the element of crashing and of flowing. There's that moment of being a fluid movement with that split second of the hard edging, if you like, of feeling the power phase, like with lifting, like with punching. It's definitely present in skiing as well.
All right, we'll see you next time with Ski Instructor Academy on a bite-sized analysis program.
Later, skaters.